have not come here to mess around. We've come here to record something useful, help brothers out all across the world, and talk about why pastors need rest and why we don't get it enough, and just moan together. But I will start off by saying I would have quit a long time ago if it wasn't for you guys. You are my rest. You are my Sabbath.
You are my sunshine, my
are,
only sunshine.
You are my only sun. Happy
when I am. Oh, hang on, that's not a good song.
Samwise Gamgees. That's what we need in the world.
You complete me. You really do. You complete me. You're my little. It's like
Nick
can be my mind, and Nick can be my soul.
Your love is better than the love of a woman.
Yeah, we've covered that. That's
I've been meditating on that.
Yeah,
I remember my answer because Saul had his two children, Michal, which was David's wife, and Jonathan, which was Michal's brother. Michal sold David out, and Jonathan stood faithful. So in comparing these two siblings, Jonathan's love was better than his sister's to David.
Right.
Not a gay thing, because that's obviously the way it's slanted.
No. Oh, I like that. I haven't thought about that.
One time.
Yeah, that's good. I still think everything we said stands, though. You haven't totally overturned our.
Still with it. Yeah.
So, I don't remember what I said.
So sure, we don't have a solid exegetical point anymore.
There was only the now.
Now we just have philosophy. We just have Cicero. That's all we have. You took our one Bible text away. thinking about I know people are kind of expecting Republic. I don't know if we mentioned that, but we were going to look at Plato's Republic, which I am keen for. We are.
Yeah, some of us were well prepared.
Yeah, were you? Yeah, some were not.
I may not have managed to get through it all.
Yeah.
So this is where audiobooks are very important. I check on the audiobook and read it along with the PDF, and it's like a 3 hours listen and stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Or if that fails, then you just get cliff notes
over the weekend, the reading. But we had friends staying with us from London, so I had no time.
Okay.
No time.
Well, anyways, after that, I figured out our next one after that. Not to plan ahead too far, and not to be too ambitious, but this one, the Theban plays.
Never heard of it.
Sure.
Sophocles.
I mean,
really?
Sophocles I've heard of, but not the Theban plays. Yeah.
No. You will recognize it as soon as you start reading it. It's a lot of famous stuff in here. But yeah, it's such good talking points. It's gonna be good. Can't wait to get into that. But we have to shake it up a little bit. We can't just do classics every day of the week. We can't just do classics all the time. We are still a theological podcast, and we are still pastors, and we do still, we still have feelings, and we are real. We do need rest.
I got hurt feelings. You know the song?
No. I'd to follow you along, but I just have no.
Rappers have feelings too.
So this comes out of, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to let you take the lead on this, Andrew. Why do we want to talk about this?
Yeah, basically, so a couple of months ago, I was off for the church, signed me off for 3 months for compassionate leave. And pretty much because I reached the point of, actually, how it happened was I sent in a text to my elders basically resigning. And I just reached a point where I didn't want to go, didn't think I could carry on in ministry. I wasn't done with ministry. I wasn't thinking never, ever again, but I was just thinking, Joe, I just haven't, I've got nothing left in the tank. I'm benched, I'm in a state, and needed to go flip burgers for a couple of years. And then maybe the Lord will bring me back.
Because a burger's not going to give you nonsense, and burger's
it's not going to send you angry emails.
Yeah, exactly.
And if it does complain, you don't care because you're just going to eat it anyway.
Yeah.
And so so that happened. So I just sent this text basically saying, sorry guys, I'm it's reached that point. I'm done. And I sent that text sort of, in between sort of floods of, properly kind of shoulder bobbing, fits of hysteria, with my wife kind of standing there forcing me to kind of say something to the elders about the way that I was feeling, because she basically came in from work and caught me caught me. Normally, I'd managed to kind of hide these outbursts.
Now you're talking about crying, not like rage, right?
Yeah, crying. Yeah.
Okay, because the fits of hysteria can be interpreted in a certain direction.
All right. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No, it was kind of like just a very, very kind of melancholic. Yeah. Just crying uncontrollably. I was emotionally bankrupt, I think. So then I sent this message, and the elders very wisely just kind of replied and said, take a month off, don't do anything rash. We'll, and then they came around and we chatted it through over the course of the next couple of months. But every month, they were very good. I didn't have to ask for any time. They just sort of, at the end of every month, just said, take another month, and then Mike and I were in South Africa at the last month of that 3-month period. So basically I went
Sounds like
this.
very good elders. Yeah. Sounds like good guys.
Well, I've said to them since, I've said to the elders since, because after this all came out, my sort of pastors fraternal in our area sort of obviously knew about it. And since then, loads of them have been coming to me and talking to me about, because they feel like they may be heading in the same direction. But anyway, we'll talk about all that in a bit. But I've since discovered that my elders reacted in a way that most elders just honestly either just lack the awareness to or the capacity to. So some people are operating in very small eldership teams, where you've got like one elder who's in his mid 80s, and just doesn't have the capacity to take on board, right? Let me plan find preachers for the next 3 months kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've got we're including myself, we're an eldership team of 6. And so, and we've got some very, which is deliberate. I don't know if it's just me coming from a Presby background, but I always just wanted a big eldership. So and God has provided men who are suitable. So anyway, they handled the whole thing perfectly. And so I think I've since spoken to them about communicating with other elderships and writing a letter or offering support if they face the same thing, just because I think they actually dealt with it so well. So that is a huge mercy.
Okay, we have to stop right there.
I've subsequently spoken to pastors.
We have to raise a glass, Nick, Peppermint team.
Yeah.
Just, to the elders.
One of them I know will be listening to this at some point. So here's to you, Cliff. There you go.
Thanks, Cliff. Stellar job, brother.
So and I can honestly say I don't the way I was then. I honestly I wouldn't be in ministry now had they not responded the way that they did. Because I've seen subsequently pastors who have spoken about having to arrange their own so they reached the point or a similar point to what I reached, and then had to arrange their own like preaching rotas and hand off responsibilities and whatever while they're in that state, which only causes everything to spiral downwards even faster.
Exactly.
Accelerates the process of burnout, I think.
Yeah.
So I think
it's the dark side of ministry. Yeah. And all the feelings that you get during the burnout of like isolation, you're on your own, you don't have the support of anyone, blah blah blah. That all becomes extrapolated out, just a huge amount, because it reinforces all those feelings that nobody is there to swoop in and look after you when you need it. So so that's the background to this. And so I did a bit of the pretty much the first month I was off, I stared into space blankly, kind of dribbled a bit into my beard, and and sort of tried to the other good thing the elders did is they gave me very strict mandates and just said I'm not at all to engage with any kind of theology or anything. So I was to switch off totally from anything ministry or theology related. It was my mandate was to watch movies, go for walks, play PlayStation.
Would you be allowed to like read the Western classics?
anything they said that would not sort of trigger the same sense of fatigue and stuff. But
would you be allowed to like study Greek?
No. I think if I were your elder, Mike, right, and you were approaching me with the text message and the tears and everything, and said, and I was like, right, you're going to take 3 months off. And then you said to me, can I still do Greek? I would say, hell no.
What?
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah,
the
that's what I would say.
refreshing, it's like the fountain of life for me.
Yeah, no, that's what you
how could you-
think. That's what
Could
you
you
think.
take that
But
away?
it's your coping mechanism now, but it's not the same as rest. Anyway,
yeah. And I guess what you're saying is we need permission to be just a Christian for a while.
Yeah.
And sometimes people have got to force that because we're so in the ministry mode that we do forget to be Christians.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's true.
Yeah, and the problem is no. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I had no idea you were going to tell everything.
Yeah,
that's
not everything. That's not even close to everything.
That's the stuff.
I mean, like, wow. I was just like, wow, we're in deep water right now. You just shared your whole story. That changes my whole marketing campaign for this podcast episode. I'm just gonna. Andre shares his story.
Yeah,
Andre, something along those lines.
Andre in the
you're gonna have to think of better clickbait than that.
You can tell I've never really done well with clickbait. But what I was going to say is just like one of the things that I think, and I was actually talking to my elders about this the other day. Well, just in a casual conversation, it was like a thing that I've had to wrestle with a little bit. I think this has just been a thing for me from the beginning, in that a thing with me from the beginning, in that maybe coming from a charismatic model, or maybe like a brethrenish sort of like approach where, there's no ways vocational ministry can be justified. Everyone's just like, okay, fine. If you want to preach, but you've got to be bivocational, and you've got to, so there's no like, here we go. Here's a thing that you can really rely on as a, and be remunerated in. And that is just, for better or for worse, been some of the thing that has hung over me. So I've always felt like, going into it, like definitely felt called to preach, but always felt that I gotta, I can't rely on this alone and so forth. But made a radical switch around with that, because realized, of course, that's just a train smash at every level. That is a completely, I now stand against that idea, not just for my own sake, but it's just a really, really stupid idea on every front. Yes, you can have bivocational people, so fine if you are out there, but no, there's more to say than that, and we'll leave that for another time. But the thing that I think now, is something that stays with me a little bit is that, everyone has a difficult life. As a pastor, you realize that more than most. I think that it's not, it's not like you're uniquely going through, troubled times or anything. So whether you're a banker or a janitor, it doesn't really matter. You've got these weights on you. You've got these things you have to sort out. You're facing burnout. All of these. So I've been very hesitant to see myself in any sort of unique or what's the word, kind of entitled position or something like that. But it's so, and it's sort of, the two connect in my mind, in that it's equally wrong, because I've sort of slowly come to realize that actually the only danger you're ever in pastoral ministry is when you start doing that, when you start pretending that it's not a very, very hard job, because actually it really is. And it's like, we joke about the burger flipping thing, but it's like, there is the reality to the fact that you can switch off that freaking burger grill. You can whatever you're doing, you can switch it off when you are preparing a sermon. Even I realize it's more than just sermon prep, but even just in the sermon prep alone, it's like there's an artistic component, which is always volatile anyway. Anyone's doing any kind of artistic work, it's always like you're putting yourself out there. There's the rigorous academic side, and the hermeneutics exegesis thing, and a high accountability, and a real sort of threshold that is like with the fear of God attached. It weighs on you. And then there is the reality that the thing comes through your personality. It's like this thing that's being birthed through your actual person every single week. It's really kind of like relentless, actually, if you think about it. And those weeks come so fast, and there's so much else going on in life at the same time. So it's never just preparing a sermon. It's always preparing a sermon in the midst of complete chaos. And that over and over again. I mean, you don't want to sort of ask for any special sort of what is the word I'm even looking for? Any sort of special pleading or anything, but but there's just something to that, right? There is something to that I think if I had to ever step down from ministry for any reason, I would fight for that pastor, because, you know, just if my whole thing has just been to realize that point, and that would be real, you know, because there is something about it. You don't do it for the money. That's the thing. It's not a money thing. It's not a normal career thing. It's just out of the categories that we usually use. It's your lifeblood every single week like that, and it's crazy.
It's a special.
I think that is a sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's a special set of burdens that you don't really find anywhere else, because, you know, you have to conduct your family in a way that it is the best family in the church. You have to live your life in such a way that everyone can copy everything that you do.
Yes.
You have to handle the word of God with integrity, like you said, with the fear of the Lord. And then you have to herd cats. You know, you've got this congregation of people.
Yeah. A lot of them not members, a lot of them not even interested, you know.
And they're treating you like they treat their politicians.
Yeah.
And you constantly have to, it's always gentleness and great patience is your only allowable response. You're never allowed to take things personally. You always have to go further in sacrifice than anyone else. And so it's a very unique position.
Yeah.
And I think there are other ways that we can make mistakes, comparing ourselves to other fields of work as well. So one of the big mistakes that I made was right from the outset, just kind of kicked against I'm going to take a day off each week, you know, like a Wednesday or a Friday or a Monday, which is, you know, standard pastoral practice, you know, in addition to, you know, like a Saturday where you'll do some time off, but also inevitably, if we're preaching on the Sunday, we're going to be doing some sermon prep on the Saturday, whether it's in the morning or the evening, or you're going to think about it at some point. But I kicked against taking any other day off, because I thought, you know what? I got guys in my church who are working Monday to Friday, and they've got big responsibilities on the Sunday too. So, and the only day they've got to chill out is a Saturday. And so I'm not gonna take more time off than them. That's how I used to think about rest.
Yeah.
And the same way with that's within the week, but within the day, same principle. So I'd be thinking, well, I'm not going to rest in the afternoon if I've got something heavy on in the evening, because some guys will be coming from work straight to that evening thing and will not be getting the rest either. But it's really wrong-headed to think about it that way. And this is what I've subsequently discovered. You know, it's totally wrong-headed, you know, for reasons related to kind of common sense. So, you know, we go from, you know, let's say we do like a 9 to 5 ministry day and then go to a ministry thing in the evening. We're doing the same job morning till evening. Whereas if someone goes from being an accountant and then goes to their small group, it's a significant shift of gear. So it's still an output of energy, but it's not the continual grind and the slow depletion of energy in the same way that if you're being an accountant from morning until night, you know, so it's a change of energy output. So it is just wrong-headed for that reason, but also I think it is wrong-headed for the reason of it doesn't really matter what everybody else is doing. You have to think about your own energy outputs and capacity and the taxation of what you do on your own soul. You know, there's a cost, and you have to be aware of that cost. And I think a lot of pastors are not self-aware enough to know what is depleting them and what is refilling them, and to be sensible about that they've got more stuff in the schedule that fills them than depletes them.
Yes, that's a big point.
And I mean, also just in terms of the nature of the responsibilities, you know, if you don't meet all your deadlines, you know, you're juggling a number of balls. You know, if you work for McDonald's, you know, you couldn't sell as many hamburgers. But if you drop the balls in your job, you know, so-and-so is backsliding, so-and-so is on the brink of suicide, so-and-so's marriage is at stake, so-and-so's child is derailing. So, you know, it's,
or even just
there's much more hanging in the balance.
Or your children who are looking at you, and your friends' children who are looking at you, and you know, the fact that the sermon doesn't come, they miss a good sermon on Sunday. You know, that's a big thing. You know, they had to get some half-baked thing from someone else because you flunked out or something. I don't know. They're just, every time you step into the pulpit, it's like a heaven or hell, life and death, eternity thing. I mean, that's a big deal. And if it's not a big deal,
and
that's a problem.
I think, sorry, go. sorry,
it should be a big deal. No, just saying, like, I know there are many who go, oh, well, it's not that much of a big deal. Well, yes, it is, and it should be. And that's where I'm sort of preaching to myself now, because it has to be a big deal. It's right that that's a big deal. And then, of course, one more thing is that I mean, I won't speak for you guys, but I fail all the time. So, now it's not only a big deal, but you're not actually doing it right, and it's like, so you're working through your own justification as a Christian, your ongoing Christian life. You're trying to just deal with the baggage that everyone else is dealing with. And yet, all these other things. So it is, it's worth.
It's a peculiar burden.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that one of the kind of mantras that I've sort of started repeating to myself is that there is no rest without peace. Because part of the problem for me is that I'd get to the end of a Friday and I'd still have about 13 things on my to-do list that I never got a chance to do. All of them would be important. A lot of them would be things that my church would expect of me, even though I've prioritized them lower than other things.
Yeah.
So I'm getting to the end of a Friday with my Saturday being my day off. And I'm thinking, I know that I've let a lot of people down this week, that there are things that people would have wanted me to do that I haven't done. But I'm at Friday night. It's time to take my daughter to gymnastics, and I've got no more time. Like that's it. But I would not be at peace with that. So that's the thing, is I go into the Saturday carrying the burden. So for half the Saturday, I'm a write-off anyway, because I'm still shrugging off all of the weight of my kind of disappointment of the things, and also disappointment, fear of man, fear of what people are going to think of me because I haven't done this or could have done that, but
that's a big one.
That kind of
thing.
All that I'm shrugging off until late in the Saturday. And then, I'm trying to focus on my son playing football, something like that, but I'm actually just thinking about the week. And then I get to the end of Saturday where I'm trying to, I don't know, relax and enjoy dinner with my family and then watch a movie with them or something. But really what I'm thinking about is the next day. So like that even though I had a day of rest, I didn't rest on the day because I had no peace. I was not satisfied. I felt guilty. I felt that I've let people down, and I'm carrying all that into my day off, which is not actually, there's no rest for me. And it would actually, in some ways, a lot of Saturdays I felt, I think I would have been better off if I just stayed at my desk,
right.
this Saturday.
Right.
And so you start to do that. You start to do that because actually, like, you do the mandatory family stuff so that your family doesn't get hacked off with you, because again, you're trying to be a paragon in every area of your life. You're trying to be exemplary. You're trying to say, follow me as I follow Christ, and say at home, I'm trying to do that. But at the same time, internally, I'm just not engaging with life outside of the church. So I think that idea of actually finding not just having a day off, but to actually have peace with your day off, is very, very important. So when I'm stopping.
I mean, you've just had this recent experience of having to sort of re-rig the whole process. So what would you say are the things where you're able to escape into, or the way that you're able to find peace, or what are the things that you've changed, or what are the things that you are amping up that you've enjoyed that get you there?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because I think the first thing is actually to say that, because escapism gets a lot of a bad rep. Like I've heard like John Piper and others talking about how Christians shouldn't be engaged in escapism and that kind of thing. I actually,
him and Richard Baxter and the Reformed pastor, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it's just one of the most devastatingly bad ways of thinking about it. I think a much healthier point of view is the Tolkien point of view, which is that escapism is essential for not just a happy life, but a deep and meaningful life. Like you must escape. You must take a break from reality and engage your imagination in order to make sense of reality.
That's exactly why I study Greek.
That's why I listen to audiobooks.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we do these things. Yeah. And so I think a very, very helpful book that I read was by a guy named David Murray.
Reset.
Reset.
Reset, yeah. Totally.
And he advocates this. So he's saying that you gotta escape. And so he's like, you go to Netflix, you go to PlayStation, you read a book, you go for a walk, whatever your version of escapism is. Obviously, there are healthier forms of escapism than others, but as long as it's healthy, as long as it's godly, go for it. So so I think that's the first point to say. I mean, there are lots of things that I found that I just don't. And again, like, it's all things that are occurring to me about self-knowledge, just knowledge of myself. So the idea of just sitting around the fire and caring with people, just chilling out and sitting around the fire and listening to music and talking on and off and having a drink and stuff like that. That's deeply embedded into my psyche as a,
what does caring
South
mean,
African.
Andre? What does caring mean?
Yeah, there is no translation that does it justice. It's untranslatable. You just have to go to South Africa and try it.
It indicates the object of the sentence.
Yeah,
that's right.
to habitate.
Yeah, it is just so things like that I've just not been doing. It's like in the UK, the culture around fires is very different. So when you have a barbecue, one person stands out by the fire, everybody else is inside. And it's just a very different thing. So I've kind of given up on it as a practice, but it's made me realize that things like that are essential for my just my basic psychological well-being. And so it is just like getting to know myself in that way. Reading. So I think I default to watching TV when I'm so tired, because most of the time I read all day, and then like I'll want to read. There's lots of books that I'd like to read, fictional books, I mean, but I just don't. Like, by the end of the day, I'm just too tired to keep my eyes focused on a page. So I'll just default to TV. And sometimes that's absolutely fine and right. But what I found is that actually reading a good book is far, far more relaxing than watching some rubbish on Netflix. Like, so obviously, if you're watching something brilliant, like the new Rings of Power series on Amazon Prime, which is, in my opinion, absolutely outstanding.
No comment.
Nailed it. And the writing is beautiful. That I can watch. That is truly relaxing. But so little things like that about knowing myself, but also like I just need to get out in the world and do some exercise. So like something like judo, something like touch rugby, something like hiking or whatever. Just whatever you need to do, just getting out there. That is age-old practice. That's good. But find escapism is, I think, the whatever works for you.
There's one of my escapes right there. Guitar.
Yeah, one time.
Yeah.
What's in the guitar case, SA? My guitar. It's my guitar.
But
awesome.
So I think it is just finding something, some escapism, and then going for that. But
I mean, I would agree with all of that, and you do need to know yourself. I mean, I'm probably more of a YouTube than a Netflix guy, so I've deliberately gone and subscribed to history channels, just all sorts of stuff. So I'll watch some memes, I'll watch some history, I'll watch some movie reviews, I'll check out 60 Minutes, and I can look at several.
It sort of reminds me of, because I've seen him on the dark side as well. It's not pretty. So I understand why I understand why he needs to do stuff like that. I remember being on a plane ride to him, and he's just like pigging out on stuff I didn't even want to talk about. Right. But
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. The classics.
We don't want to go there.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it.
But it sort of reminds me of, like, hey, you're on this diet, right? And you're gonna just have to pig out eventually and break, and so you want to just fill your fridge with free food. So that when you pig out, you got like nice stuff like History Channel and celery and that sort of you can just go for it and you'll be okay. It's just the problem is when you just are not prepared for that, and you end up like Nick that day with donuts dunked in caramel, sprinkled with more donuts. It was bad.
Free movies on the airplane. Get them all in. But I mean, and I guess the other thing that really helps, and I don't know what your guys' devotional practices are, but I've been, from my earliest days as a Christian, I've always kept a journal. So I've got over 80 journals that I've kept over 20 years.
That's
And
amazing.
so just, for me, reading through the Bible in a year does not work.
No.
Reading D.A. Carson, daily devotionals through the year doesn't work.
No,
But, Robert Murray McShane doesn't work.
Mm.
And so what I have to do is I have to just read. I read the Puritans, Thomas Brooks. I read systematic theology. I'm reading the scriptures until something grabs me, and then I just start journaling. So my last journal entry was here's from Thomas Brooks: the meritorious cause of all. The sin is the meritorious cause of all sorrow and suffering. And so just take that as a statement and dissect it.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, because it's helpful for people to even hear that. Oh, okay, well, so that's okay that doesn't work, yes, it is okay. And find something else. The problem is when you don't find something else, and when you just go, oh, geez, okay, what's the point of anything? No, it's just, you've got to, like, I always think of C.S. Lewis, and he's like, well, if you're reading those fluffy devotionals and you're finding nothing's happening there, get a good big book of theology, a pipe between your teeth and a pencil in your hand, and soon your soul's going to be soaring in ways you don't even understand. And that's definitely been my experience. Now, it is also true that you can get derailed and nothing devotional can happen, but you can be selective and careful and really help yourself out. And you can put
I like what Tim Keller said, and I've applied it. You got to preach until the heart moves, and apply that to anything. Pray until the heart moves. Read until the heart moves.
Yes.
It's not about, I'm in the sacred book, therefore it's the right thing. It's, is your heart and mind drilling into the reality that is God and everything that pertains to God, so that your heart is drawn out after it.
That's it. Lectio Divina, sacred reading. I mean, that is a well-worn path, and it really has worked for me. And that I just love the way that, you got a bookmark, it's in your Bible. It's like you don't have to overplan the whole thing. You just pick it up. Psalms usually, especially if like for my particular little thing, I love the whole, you've got, the more languages you can squeeze in there, it just gets you reflective, and then you just, I think of the process. You just basically read it, paraphrase it, you can journal it, you can pray it over, and then you just go to the next one, and you just keep going, and it's like, and it just fills you up. For me, it just fills me up. There's no structure involved. I don't have to worry about where the beginning is and where the end is. It's like the rest of my life always has to worry about stuff like that. But just me, the Bible, and God, and pray. And I know I'm basically on the right track if I just stick to that stuff. And it's huge,
because if that's not happening, I mean, if I'm not having those moments of reality, if I'm not having those moments of my own soul is getting fed through my own engagement with God, and I'm just having to go through the routines of pumping out sermons, pumping out Bible studies, pumping out devotionals.
The days are numbered.
Exactly. And your own heart is not enthused by the truth that you're engaging with. Because you can't. That's when the burnout happens for me.
Because you start treating it like a job, and you can't do that. Because as soon as you do that, you're like, no sane person in the world would do that job for a job. So
because brothers, we are not professionals.
That's true. And brothers don't let other brothers plant churches.
Some brothers won't listen to their brothers, though.
They'll plant churches anyway. Friends don't let friends plant churches. That's a famous mantra.
I do think, though, that in this, so this wasn't my experience personally, but having spoken to, because obviously one of the things that happens when you have this is people start opening up about their experiences, and you don't realize how many people have been through this, and it's not always people in ministry, though. I think there is a striking statistical imbalance for people in ministry. Like I think that in and of itself is just, even if you don't really understand why people in ministry burn out faster than other professions, and so I think that's just worth being aware of. So you don't have to understand
so
it.
What are the signs of burnout, Andre? What are the signs of burnout?
Well, so just before we get there, one of the things I was going to say was that it wasn't my experience personally, but a lot of the people I speak to talk about being absolutely spiritually like not able to engage. They cannot pick up their Bible, they cannot pray, they cannot engage with anything like that. That wasn't my experience.
Dead towards spiritual things.
Just dead, but not even dead, like almost resistant. Like there was something deep within them was pushing it all away, like almost out of a need to survive, And I do think that that one of the things that pastors in those positions need to realize is that obviously it's not okay, because it means that you're in a very, very burnt out state. But it is okay, because it's okay to recognize that, to lay that with the Lord, and then rest, and then just and call upon other people to carry you in your weakness. So some pastors are in that position will be listening to this and all of our talk about getting with God with the Bible and that, and they'll be thinking that is the last thing in the world that I want to do. And I think people in those positions need to know they are already past the point of burnout. They are like, they are burnt out, but they are still they've somehow kept their emotional stability, but they need rest.
Although they should also know that I was about 7 years in that state, and I came through. So it can be done. Can be done.
It can
I don't know. I think there's some permanent scarring in there, Micah.
Probably true.
Yeah.
Signs of burnout. What would you reckon?
Okay, so the first sign of burnout, I think, is best summed up by Tolkien. In that conversation between Bilbo and Gandalf, where he says, "I feel thin." Gandalf sort of stretched, like butter scraped over too much bread.
Yeah.
When you start to have that feeling, that's not quite burnout. You go through that from time to time. But I think that feeling best summed up my emotional state for the better part of about 4 years. Since, it's been on and off pretty much my whole ministry, but solid, steady state, increasingly desperate feeling of thinness, of being stretched too far, of just, you feel like there's nothing left here. And that feeling, I think, is that the tank is empty, the light is on, and the car's starting to splutter.
There's a strange paradox there, isn't there? Because who is sufficient for these things? There is a sense of inadequacy. There is a sense of we don't have enough to give to everyone else that we know they need, and there's a constant sense of falling short of being able to provide what only the Lord can provide, and there's that desperation in that thinness. But it's that thinness where there's no color in it, and there's not even an emotional concern about that thinness. It's just,
and you're not even able to go to the Lord with that and say, I can't do it.
I think that's true, but I think for me, it was always something that I recognized and was able to go to the Lord for, but it just became increasingly desperate. So, another book I think I'd recommend is this one, Zeal Without Burnout by Christopher Ashe, and he's well known here in the UK. He's a very, very good guy. And he talks about the difference between sacrificial living and dependence on the Lord's strength and burnout, and it's very, very helpful. And he's basically saying that part of our sacrificial living is about maintaining a sustained sacrifice. So you do have to be aware of, sacrificial living isn't just you decimating yourself. It is about you giving yourself, because
there is a giving that gives back, and there is a giving that just depletes you. So here's two signs of burnout that I'm in a conversation with several pastors, and here are two signs of burnout. When you begin to resent.
Before you do that, something I just wanted to put in there quickly, it was that one of the reasons we're having this conversation is because Andrew mentioned that he was talking to his pastor buddies and getting this repeated sort of theme. And then I was talking to you, and it was probably what we need to talk about at some point as well, is just sabbaticals and how they fit into all of this, but how you were, having these conversations as well. So that we need to talk about this at some level. So anyways, proceed.
Yeah, so the signs of burnout. One is when you begin to resent the people in your church. You think of Jesus on the cross, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. You've got this high perspective where you're constantly filtering everything through the lens of the gospel, and you're able to look at people in their need for God, and you are compassionate towards them in their need, and you're extending to them mercy, not justice. But then what happens is when your emotions begin to deplete, and you're now exhausted, and you're unable to default to the gospel way of looking at people and treating with them all the time, the resentment, the unforgiveness, the criticism, and the self-pity, and all the things that add on the back of that begins to pile up. And that's a sign that that you need to just take a step back, either just a holiday or even just digging deeper in your prayer life. It depends on where you're at.
I'd add to that it is things related things to watch out for, and you touched on a few of them, where things like when, you know, I think I've always at least liked to think of myself as someone who's been able to absorb a fair amount of criticism, you know, and your people with people who are sort of acting sort of irrationally around you, and sort of blasting you, and you just kind of calmly, like you said, we've always got to be calm, we absorb it, we give measured responses, that kind of thing. But what I began to notice is that the more tired I got, the more sensitive I became to criticism. So somebody would just not even criticize me, like it would just be something that somebody said about the church, and I would be raging over it internally for weeks, you know, like even if it wasn't directly pointed at me, and if something was directly pointed at me, it would become harder and harder and harder. And it's both a symptom and a cause. So I think that does weigh you down over time. So I think a lot of what I went through was just simply the accumulation of those sorts of experiences over 20 years without adequately resting from them. But the other thing that it's a symptom, because like you say, you've got no emotional reserves, and so your body, your mind, your attitude goes into defense mode, and criticism simply will not stand. So you know, instead of going away and measuring and thinking, oh, maybe they had a bit of a point there, but no, that's not right, and so I can just dismiss that, and you might be able to do that in another time, but now you can't. This person becomes the end.
And it's probably personal, you know, depending on your individual character, personality, and experience. When you get tired and you default to your sins, what are your sins that you default to? For some, it could be sensitivity. For some, it could be anger. For some, it could be, I'll stuff it.
Yeah, just disengaging. Yeah.
So I think the other symptom, and probably one that I would be prone to if I were to look at my tiredness, is insensitivity. You know, you look at Paul in Galatians 4 verse 19, that he's laboring in birth for the Galatian church because of his deep concern and his care, and he's pouring out this prayer and laboring. And then, you know, burnout would be not laboring. Burnout would be insensitivity. Burnout would be something's gone bad in someone's life and there's a flatline response and not a sympathetic response.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is worth just being aware that, you know, like if you go through some of the Psalms, you know, Psalm 42, for example, you know, as the deer, you know, you go through there and there are some telltale symptoms of classic depression. Any psychologist reading Psalm 42 will describe, you know, he's talking about not sleeping, he's talking about not eating, he's talking about, you know, crying all the time. You know, these are, you know, when your post-workout weep is happening more frequently and not always post a workout. When your shower sob isn't just in the shower anymore, you know, like that's like, it's stuff like that, you know, you just have to be aware of it. We're just humans, and human beings, there are telltale signs of depression. So like one of the things, I've always been an expert sleeper. It's always been something of my spiritual gifting, you know, I can just sleep anywhere, but I couldn't sleep. I could not sleep. You know, I've heard other people talk about not sleeping. I've always felt sorry for them. It's a bit like toothache. I don't like to hear about it, but I've never had
known
toothache.
That,
so, you know, so like I just, I could not sleep at all. I was getting maybe a couple of hours at best each night, and it was broken, interrupted sleep, you know. So that is not good, you know, especially if that is not the norm. If that's not something that you are accustomed to, then that is a sign that deep down something's not right. If you're crying all the time, or like you say, becoming numb, or outbursts of anger all the time, or all of the above, these things are not good. They show that there is something stirring beneath the water. And and not eating, or eating far too much, which would be my
comfort eating.
So I don't starve myself. I'm not a martyr. I will stuff my face full of stuff. You know, even if I don't want any more spaghetti, I'll just put it in there. So so those sorts of things are worth looking after. But yes, but in addition to that, there are some things that I think pastors particularly, so the resentment thing, I think is a big one. It's a huge one. But the other thing, and I don't know if you've picked this up, Nick, is that often again, and it's also connected with depression, anxiety, is feelings of isolation. So, I just began to feel honestly like there was not another person in the world who understood, like, and it's so cliche. And I used to hear about this kind of thing and just sort of think, oh, what sort of wishy-washy nonsense is this, but honestly, it's how I felt. Like, in the back of my mind, I knew it probably wasn't true, but it was just my feeling. I felt totally isolated from my church. I felt isolated from my eldership. I felt isolated from my friends. I felt isolated from my family. I felt isolated from my church network, the FIC. I felt isolated from my tradition. I felt like, it didn't belong anywhere or in anything.
There's a song for that. There's a song for that. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen.
That's the one.
Nobody knows but Jesus.
Yeah, or even the poor wayfaring stranger, walking through this world alone. Like, you just start to feel like, yes, I am truly alone, and it's a scary feeling.
That is a sign of depression, isn't it?
Yeah.
And depression can be circumstantial in the sense that there's a pile up of situations that bring about these results. Pastors can get depressed too. Yeah,
for sure.
One of the best ways I've heard burnout described is by Christopher Ash in his book, and he says this: there are mountains, sheer cliffs in the human mind. I remember as I crashed into breakdown, the terrifying feeling that my mind was becoming unhinged, that I was balanced precariously over a precipice, and that beneath me were dungeons of despair and sloughs of despond from which I might never escape. That is a frightening thing, and I think that is it. You just literally get to the point where you think, I don't see any way out of this. This is me. And so, like, you're going to bed and you're thinking, Lord, take me. I can't face another. I don't want to live. I've got no desire to stay in this world anymore. I kind of feel like I have to because my wife, my children, my church, but I don't want to. I don't want to stay. I want to go. And so I think when you get to that point, like, yes, you just don't want to get to that point. So you want to be wise before then. And I think that's probably where we need to go from, because the reality is, and again, Chris Ashmore in his book, he's got terrifying statistics. In fact, I'll try and quickly dig them up. I think it's something like 1,500 pastors burn out from ministry every month in the United States. Wow. 1,500 pastors burn out from ministry every month.
What? That's
in
crazy.
The US. I mean, it's crazy. And there are all sorts of statistics like that that he mentions that I think is just we do have to realize that while we don't want to diminish the hardships of others or say that, or develop this kind of woe is me culture, because pastoral ministry, although it is very hard, is a very privileged job, and we've should feel very thankful to God that we've been called into this work, and it is a great work, and there are no other works in the world where you can give this amount of time to prayer and to Bible study and to study of theology and to teaching. Amen. And like it is something we should be truly grateful for and rejoice in and be thankful for, with fear, with reverence, with the full weight of the responsibility that we have. But without diminishing that it is very, very hard. It's it's a beautiful thing, a good thing, a joyous thing, but it's a hard thing. And those things are true at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I think it's worth thinking a little bit about, because in hindsight, I realized that part of it was just exhaustion. Part of it is just not adequately resting, doing ministry for 20 years in various capacities without adequately resting. Eventually it's going to get you. And that's what happened to me. But I also learned that there were some things that I wasn't being very wise about that were accelerating that decline. Yeah. So it is worth just pointing that out, but then also start to think about, well, what can we do to preserve ourselves? Quiet times, or not quiet times, but times with the Lord, essential.
Yeah. Real times. Yeah.
Real time. Yeah.
And then the other thing I think you could probably comment on now in a way that, I don't think Nick and I could at this point, would be just, you've just come out of an extended break like, as you say, just
what is that like? I've never
well, I mean, I don't mean like, okay, obviously, obviously it'd be nice to have a holiday and stuff, but you've had something there that's, as you were saying before, like, no theology, and geez, I couldn't even imagine that. It's just like, it's like a completely different section of your life there that you yourself, I know, hadn't experienced anything like that before. So, I mean, is that a solution?
Well, it was really hard because I really wanted to, like everything in my mind, because I guess and I'm sure you guys will relate to this, but what I do, and I remember Mike used to say this about me, like when I faced conflict, I became very analytical. So I guess it's a lot of the ways that or when there was like tension at home or something, I would just analyze the daylights out of it, because my way of resolving inner turmoil is to think it through, like to analyze it and to assess it and to carve out the way forward by solving the problem intellectually in my mind. So this is how you achieve emotional stability, is through mental stability, and that's what I used to think anyway. And you do that by solving the problem. And so
very
but what happened was, when the problem becomes unsolvable, mainly because the problem isn't anything to do with intellect, it's to do with fatigue, then that becomes a part of the problem, that process of trying to think things through. You can't fix it that way. So then it becomes like when you're trying to stop thinking about something and you can't stop thinking about it, when you keep replaying things in your mind, it actually adds to you being worn down. And so the idea of that was for me to stop thinking, to reset my whole mind, to force my mind away from the issue, because I was becoming obsessive over it, over my perspective on what was wrong with the world and my life and everything. And so the whole idea was to literally, because it was a mental health problem, I could not stop myself from obsessing over the various issues related to what I was going through. And so I had to force the time away. So it was good. It was necessary. And even if I really wanted to, and even if ordinarily I find reading theology relaxing and engaging with theology, it's a kind of healthy escapism for me. But it had become a part of the problem. So I had to sort of fast from that. And so, yes, I think that was, I mean, I'd like to say, I think it sounds melodramatic, but I'd like to say it was life-changing, because it was, had I not had that rest when I had it, I certainly would not be in ministry. I'm certain of that, 100% certain of it. But I also think that I may not have been evangelical, or churched, or and depending on my mood, a lot of the time, like I was saying to Mike earlier, I wasn't so much suicidal as I just lost the will to live. But everybody has their moments weakness where you think, where you do give into those kind of cowardly impulses to say, I just want to end it now. And so there were those moments, and I think that in that sense, getting that time is life-saving. And I've got Anglican friends who embedded into their system, because they've been dealing with this for so many drawbacks to being part of an old institution. But one of the benefits is they've learned from lessons along the way.
Right.
So because they've had to deal with this for so long, it is embedded into the system that you have to take a certain number of retreats every year, and that every 7 years you're up for a sabbatical, and you can take it and must take it and should take it, and then you're encouraged to take it, and all these sorts of things are there in place. There are support networks in place for clergy who are going through these kinds of things. But when you're part of free churches and independent churches
and Baptist free churches and Baptist free church plants,
I'll be honest, like Baptists, as a tradition, I've got no love for it. Like I just don't. I think we've made some very stupid decisions along the way, right. and in lots of ways we're the worst of all the traditions.
Well, the Baptist Union, funny enough, which I count as liberal, is very well organized.
Well,
Interesting.
I do think it is that. So in my context, so the only history really that our church draws on is the history that the people in the church can remember, right? And the only tradition our church draws on is the tradition that is important to the church that presently is alive. So we have no deep memory of things that have gone wrong in that sense. And so I think I do think I want to go on a bit of a crusade across evangelicalism, saying that we need to. This has been a practice for I don't know how many thousand years, taking sabbaticals, taking study breaks. We should recover this in the Baptist.
So here's what the Baptist Union does. I think they force a 3-month sabbatical. So for 1 month, you have to spend time with your family.
Mm-hmm.
For 1 month, you need to study. And for 1 month, you need to go away and be with God.
I really like that. I think that's very good.
So you have to, and you have to keep a journal, or you have to give an account to your elders on these 3 fronts that you've done these things.
Yeah, that's great. That seems to.
Yeah,
I feel like that creates a sense of rest.
Boxes.
Yeah.
No, I think that's right. But I also think with the caveat that if you need to take 3 months to just do nothing at all, that is okay as well. So I think again, the last thing you want with a sabbatical is pressure.
Yeah, this would be the built-in regular one that's not attending to an emergency. This would just be the
right. But often, yes, and I agree. And I think that if I were in a steady state of mind, I would opt for study, in my sabbatical, because I would want to do that. And there are amazing facilities here in the UK that you can take advantage of to help pastors study in their sabbaticals. So you can go stay with one of the universities and things like that. But I just want to say that part of the problem is that a sabbatical, yes, it's partly there to keep you rested. But I think if we had to introduce the system now, for most pastors, it won't be a way of keeping on top of things. It will be like a survival thing. So I in my little area here in rural part of England, there are 5 pastors that I know of in the last couple of years who have burnt out. And that's among a group of like 12 or something. So it's a huge statistic. And COVID, I don't understand why and how fully, but COVID has accelerated this. It's been nuts since then. So there's been problems.
Sabbatical for me is an eschatological hope. It's in the next life. It's not this life.
It's literal Sabbath.
Sabbath. Yeah, no, you're confusing the Sabbath with the sabbatical.
I mean, I've been in the ministry in New Zealand for 12 years and have not had a sabbatical.
Yeah.
But you see, part of the problem is, and if and I'm not.
I remember being tired when you arrived in New Zealand.
And then I made you more tired.
I was already in need of a sabbatical when you got here. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But that's you see, that's the thing, because as I began to think about this, I began to think of how many times I actually felt. I remember when I was still in London, so this is, and still studying at Oak Hill. So this was, maybe 8 years into ministry. I remember feeling a bit like this, like I did then. Not quite as severe, but I remember having real moments of thinking like, sheesh, I've got nothing. It's quite scary. I remember actually talking to you, Mike, at that point, and that must have been pre-2014. That was like somewhere like 2012, somewhere around there. I remember talking to you, and at that point, you were also saying, yes, I've been through that a few times already. and this is, you see, I think this is exactly is that I just began to think of this as normal and just kept plodding. But you can only plod for so long.
Exactly. And COVID, I mean, you mentioned COVID earlier, and Mike and I think have been in the same situation here. His is self-afflicted, but because he did a PhD.
Got to use your COVID well.
Yeah, but we didn't have our December holidays. You didn't get to go. I didn't have my December holidays. The government decided that they were going to do something around the traffic light system, and I couldn't go away because I had to be around to help my church negotiate that. because I was the one who was doing all the main thinking about how we're going to meet each change, because the government's chopping and changing all the time.
Yeah, some churches like didn't bother suing the government, so
Yeah,
I suppose we had a little bit.
It was
more
a bit self-inflicted.
If we're gonna bring up self-inflicted,
but
taking on a massive legal battle may not have necessarily been the best way to do it.
I told you we're appealing that, but anyway, that's
another
podcast.
Oh boy.
Look, John MacArthur won on an appeal. That's all I can say.
But honestly, the kind of tough talk that a lot of us do because we feel that we have to. So I've become very, very sensitive to this. That every time I ask someone how are they, their response is so busy at the moment. Now they might not.
My response is coping and sober.
My response is.
But that is part of the problem. It's embedded into our culture that you have to be busy. If you're not busy, you're a waste of space. It would be really refreshing if people started to reply by saying, I think I'm appropriate. I have an appropriate work-life balance at the moment. Work-rest balance. Like imagine somebody saying that, saying, yeah, no, I think I'm not too busy. I'm actually resting quite a lot at the moment. Like nobody ever says that, but it would be really good if people did start to say that and if it were true. So the other thing is that people talk about is the kind of like, and I used to do this. So I'm sensitive to this because I used to do it. I'd hear about people burning out, and I would almost be very resentful to them because I'd be like, well, stuff you.
Yeah,
some of us are just plodding through this nonsense.
Exactly.
You talking about this. I know guys who've had like a year, we're given off, by a year from churches and from, it's not uncommon at all. 6 months would be a standard time to recover from burnout. 6 months to a year. And I'd be like, when I would be like a totally new man after that. And the reality, the honest answer is that after 3 months, I didn't feel, and it wasn't 3 months of total rest. I did do some preaching in that 3 months, but the reality is that I still don't feel totally recovered. So the reality is I think I'm back up to operational again, but I still feel the scars from what I went through, but also B, still feel like, sheesh, I'm ready for my next holiday. And so that is just worth bearing in mind, that 3 months doesn't sort it out. 3 months might just help you to survive and keep you going, but it's not going to fix everything.
Yeah. Well, and maybe, I'll throw in, I don't know that this is ideal, but it probably is worth saying for from the perspective of someone who, like, I feel like they're, as much as you'd want to sort of put this into practice, it's just the reality of it. Reminds me of starting a business, like I remember seeing people start restaurants and everything, and like, you just got to get through. And church planning is like that, because otherwise the thing's going to fold. And so you have to just do it. And so there's just a little bit of that helps you, I think. But it might be worth saying that, I think that personality types, like you mentioned earlier, Andre, that the more aware of yourself you can be, the better in some ways, and that what. And I found that, thankfully, mercifully, I mean, I've done nothing right at all, but the one thing I feel like I have just sort of had a handle on, that is saved my bacon, and we'll see if it has ultimately saved my bacon, because we've still got some walk to go before I finish strong. But assuming things go well, it's this idea of this thing is just like, it completely depletes my energy. I'm just very aware that is. So then I ask myself the question, is that something that I have to do? And you mentioned, you might let people down by not doing it. And then, so thankfully, I have like dealt with that, so I've been aware of things that completely drain me, and I've sort of been willing to say no to those things, no matter how not pleasing that is to either someone in your congregation or whatever it is. And I would really encourage people that perhaps if they're not in the situation where they can just kind of go to the elders right now and say, guys, I need a break. Most elders, I think, would respond to that in some way.
An intervention.
You might not have elders though, and you might literally be in that scenario. I'd say the next best option, in that you just got to be willing to kind of deal with that fear of man thing, and just go, okay, just be happy to let a whole lot of people down, but just try and figure out what the main things are, and try and cash in on those energy boosting things, and limit the energy depleting things, even if it's not ideal at that point, because it does help you. It's not ideal. Again, it's not, I wouldn't say this is a replacement for anything Andreas said, but just aware that some people are in that break glass for emergency scenario. But yeah, I mean, we all have to be self-aware enough to know that, at some point, if we don't deal with this, we're going to be a reproach to the cause of Christ, rather than someone that actually serves the cause. And so I think this, actually, all jokes aside, is a very, very serious matter, and hopefully it finds whoever's listening to this, and helps them along in some way, shape, or form. So we're thankful that you're still with us, man. Yeah.
Well, I am thankful too. But and friendships, and having friendships and that kind of thing is key to it.
Definitely.
There's so much more we could talk about, but
there is, and it probably is worth fleshing this out every once in a while, just coming back to this subject and just chipping some more, just saying some more stuff and throwing some more in the pot there, because I think sometimes for me anyway, it's just sometimes really helpful to hear. You might not even know them, but you kind of trust them, and we get emails like this where, hey, we're kind of experience this alignment to you, and we kind of appreciate you guys, even though we've never met, and we know what you mean. That's what it's. There is a sense in which we can just kind of get on like that, and it's helpful just to hear some guys talk about it, and then go, okay, well, oh wow, I never would have thought that would even be okay to think about. And okay, well, that's, so hopefully this, just like the rest of our recordings, hopefully it just kind of helps in that direction, just provides a little bit of a
we were your oasis and your Sabbath rest in this week.
Yeah, well, in that is true.
Well, you guys, I told you, I started off by saying you are my Sabbath rest. I mean, all seriousness, man, hanging out with you guys is huge. It's like let's put it this way, it's a big energy booster for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so cash in on the energy
as long as there's no editing in the end.
That's true. When Nick says stupid stuff all over the time, I just gotta spend hours, and then all my energy goes, no, I'm joking. I only ever edit myself. I only have myself to blame.
I'm omniquotable.
In a shock and awe sense, yeah. This morbid reality to that. No, awesome. Okay, good. Well, Reset is a book. One more. Oh wait, stupid.
Zeal Without Burnout is another one.
Zeal Without Burnout. But you know what? The best book that I think maybe even the best book for burnout. I mean, I can see it. It's right behind you there. No, right behind you. Just turn around. Turn around. I can see it right there.
Talking about that one.
That one. What is that?
Is that Greek?
No,
this
is the one. Who wrote that? Who edited that?
Oh, that's nice.
What is it called? What is it called? Tell the listeners.
It's a guy named Michael Burke.
Oh, this Burke character sounds fantastic. What is the title of the book? Come on, people can't see the video.
It's a parallel interlinear of Genesis, and it goes through the book of Genesis, and you can read it in Hebrew, Greek, Latin, and English.
Do you find it refreshes your soul and helps you out during times?
I do. I'm actually, your jokes aside, but actually what I'm doing in my own times of the Lord at the moment, not this one, sadly, but this one.
Yes, also written by who?
Also written by Michael Burke. And it's doing the same thing. And I find it very helpful. And I don't feel the need to get through very much of it at a time, but I'll translate a few verses.
Yep.
And I'll look at it in Greek and in Hebrew and in English, and not yet in Latin, but I'm working on it. And then
and it's the Lectio Divina.
I'll go through the Be Thou My Vision book, and that's my Bible reading part of it. So find that very helpful. So jokes aside, I do think this is a good resource, and doing it in another language does just help you to slow down on it a little bit. If you're reading it in English, sometimes you're not always paying attention. Sometimes you're just skimming through bits that you otherwise don't think are important. but when you're doing another language, you're forced to slow down a little bit and to contemplate every word. So I do actually find that, and my Hebrew and my Greek are not great, but I am able to go through and translate it with the help of the English there. So yeah.
No, it's good to hear, because that's exactly why that was written. And you can buy them all right now on Amazon. Thanks for the plug, and I'll pay you later. So it's no, but I mean, find your break glass for emergency kit, have it close at hand, get stuck in, and hopefully we can all get by and talk about this in eternity at the end. We can have a nice chat about how we did. All right, cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Right, take it easy.